So let's just kick it off. How have you been? And you have a new book out.
It's my second book this year. It's intense because I've been going like full on with like promotion, but it's really fun. I'm sure you know, like with your books as well, it's really fun to like finally hold it in your hand, right?
It's yeah, it's the best feeling ever. I've never promoted two books in a year though. That's a bit much.
It is the first one for me, but yeah, I'm gonna tell you the story actually in the podcast because it's really fun the way it manifested.
Okay, well let's just jump into it then.
Yeah,
So okay, well I guess we can launch it formally then. So welcome back to the podcast. It's good to see you again. You have a new book out. Please let's just kick it off. Let the remind them
yeah.
who you are for those who haven't listened to your first episode, which they should definitely do, and tell us about your new book.
Well, first of all, thank you. Oh, hold on a second, Jason. Can we start this again? Because I have the wrong mic on.
Oh yeah, no problem. Actually, I need to
Okay, I
grab that up.
think this should be even better. Now
Okay.
I have the right one.
So Zoom lets you AI generate backgrounds now. So this is supposed to be ancient Sumeria. Let's
I
see.
love it.
Let's um all right. Well, okay, so you just want to completely start over.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just kick it off. Welcome back to the show, George. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have you back. Please let everyone know, remind the audience who you are for those who have not listened to your first episode, which they definitely should, and tell us about your new book.
So, my name is George Lizos. I'm a spiritual teacher and a psychic healer, and also a priest to Hellenic polytheism. And my new book is called Ancient Manifestation Secrets, and it's actually the sequel, kind of, to my previous book that we did the episode last time, The Secrets of Greek Mysticism, which was all about the religion of the ancient Greeks. This time, with Ancient Manifestation Secrets, I'm drawing from ancient Hermeticism and therefore Hermetic philosophy, which was like a mix of the ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian philosophy to talk about manifestation, not from the New Age perspective, but from the perspective taught by the ancients, and bringing in different energetic practices so that I can teach people to manifest with their energy field. So we have a more spiritual, energetic, but also more pragmatic and grounded perspective to manifestation. And this is a book I'm so excited. I try to like dress my book today. That's why I'm wearing
Yeah.
this holographic kind of
Right.
shirt.
Good. Excellent. So that's super interesting. So let's see, where do we begin with that? I think the first thing I want to ask you is what is your definition of Hermeticism? That's the first part of my question. And the second part is, it sounds like you're pulling out a more authentic, earlier version of it. So I'm super curious after you've defined Hermeticism, how what you're looking at and what you're bringing out is different from maybe what most people understand Hermeticism to be, or what's commonly called Hermeticism in the marketplace.
Yeah. So Hermeticism is essentially a philosophical school that emerged in later antiquity, and it's the merging of the ancient Greek and the ancient Egyptian tradition. It's said to include the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes Trismegistus in Greek, and therefore that means thrice great Hermes. Now, the way it was like taught and portrayed and known to be is that it's the teachings of Hermes slash Thoth. So we have the Greek Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth, and it's their common teaching. So what happened in later antiquity, there was a lot of syncretism. There was like gods that were similar coming together, and their teachings were propagated in the world. Of course, whether it was a channeling of Hermes or Thoth, nobody really knows. We know the teachings have survived. A lot of them have survived. and have reached us to this day. What I've done with this book specifically, I focused it on the Kybalion. Now, the Kybalion is not an ancient text. It is a relatively modern text that's said to summarize the foundations of Hermeticism, specifically the seven principles of the universe that I like to call the seven ancient manifestation laws of the universe, because that's how I came to understand the Kybalion while reading it. I'm like, okay, these are ways of like understanding how the universe works and also how life is created. And therefore, we start by talking about the seven laws of the universe in a more simple and understandable way, because the Kybalion, for those people who read it, it's a very complicated kind of book. And when I was doing my research, I'm like, you know what? Because I speak three languages. I'm like, I wonder if I can get different things by reading it in different languages. So I read it a few times in English, then I read it in Greek, and I read it in Spanish. And each time I would read it, I would understand different things, which is a completely different conversation about language and how things
Super.
change when we read things in different languages. But that's the premise of the book. It's the Kybalion.
So that's such a famous book, and it's such a foundational book. It's one of the first ones that often that people discover, and it's about Hermeticism, but that's more kind of a product of the New Thought era, if I'm
It
correct.
is.
Which is not to say it's not Hermeticism, because New Thought is a product of Hermeticism in my way of thinking. But the Kybalion, I'm guessing, is a book that probably a lot of the people listening know. And so what was it in going to it? Were you able to discover new aspects of it? I'm definitely interested in how it was in different languages, but what was your take
Yeah.
going back and looking at it so intensely this time?
Yeah. So what I really discovered that in the Greek edition of the book that I didn't read in any of the English or the Spanish editions is the meaning of the word Kybalion. It's actually a Greek word. It could be a Greek word. Nobody really knows. Kymvalo, which means symbol. And when you look at the ancient Orphics, ancient texts, they talk about the seven sacred sounds of the universe.
Hmm.
The idea that the universe is created of seven sacred sounds. Hence, we have the seven principles, the seven laws of the universe. And if you want to take it more into like syncretism, thinking about other different traditions, we have the seven chakras. And
Mhm.
by the way, and the seven layers of the aura. And yesterday I was diving into Orphism, researching the next book. And there was a talk about the seven layers of the aura that the ancient Greeks talked about in a different way. They called also the chakras like energy centers. They use different names for them.
Mhm.
So I'm always fascinated as to how the number seven keeps repeating itself in ancient texts. And I find there's something important here. And yes, Kybalion is more of a new thought kind of book, but the essence of it, I feel, is very ancient. What I like to say to people is that New Age is actually really, 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 really old age, and we're
Yes.
basically
Yes. Yeah.
rediscovering. Yeah, we're rediscovering answers that the ancients have already answered. And we're taking that and we're trying to use them and apply them in a modern context.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make, and I think that that's a very basic point of clarification that's almost like so obvious that it's hiding in plain sight. But I think that simply deciding where we are orienting ourselves towards going, whether that's into the future or into the past, it's actually really important. There's a lot of assumptions that come out of that. And that's actually, I think, very confusing because you hear New Age and then, yeah, you're getting all this ancient stuff. So I think clarify, maybe we need a new term for it, but wisdom traditions is good. I like that. But that's a really important point. So how what you mentioned earlier, finding the distinction of kind of perhaps the original Hermeticism, whoever that was attributed to, whether Hermes Trismegistus was a pen name or not, as far as I know, we don't know, with what it became later. Because Hermeticism has been with us since for at least 2000 years, right? And in many ways, it's
Yeah.
just the Egyptian, it comes out of the Egyptian religion. Would you say that it's kind of the survival of the Greek and Egyptian religions in a way?
It's part of the survival
Oh,
of that.
okay.
Something I also remember reading in the Greek edition of the book, in like the preface, was which was written by the publisher. Actually, it's not part of the Kybalion. Is that they found a lot of the principles of the Kybalion in the pyramids of Egypt.
Huh.
So they go all the way back. And yesterday, I was reading about karma from the Greek perspective. It was called antipeponthos. That is a ancient Greek word for karma. And it's basically the law of cause and effect. That is one of the principles of the Kybalion. So we can see how it's all interconnected. And what the authors of the Kybalion have done is they've essentially took the basics and they've summarized them in a way that makes sense for people. If you read the Hermetic texts, the original ones, you can see the essence of that in there as well. But the reason I didn't want to go there and I chose the Kybalion is because it's something that people are familiar with.
Mhm.
It's something that people have read, but many people don't really understand because the way it's written, it's very like old school. And also, the Kybalion, the actual book, it doesn't teach you how to apply the laws of the universe and those principles. It just
Yeah.
like mentions the laws. So I wanted to make it practical. How do I take that information and how do I teach people how to apply it in their lives? And what I did, because part of my work is research and part of my work is channeling in the sense of I'm meditating, I'm connecting and seeing what comes forth.
Okay.
I went to Delphi in Greece. And I wanted to like celebrate writing this book. So I wrote most of the factual content while being here in Cyprus. And then I'm like, okay, I want to celebrate by going to Delphi. So I did a 10-day trip to Delphi and I was there. And what happened is that at Athens, at the airport, I had forgotten my luggage with my clothes at the airport, as people do. I hadn't had coffee that morning. So I went through security check, forget my bag there, and arrived in Athens without any clothes. And in retrospect, I realized that was the universe guiding me because I didn't have anything else to distract me. And I was just in a little cottage at Delphi, facing Delphi essentially. And every single morning and night, I would just write and write and write and write. And I felt like my hands writing things I wasn't aware of at the moment. And then I started practicing
Wow.
and it all made sense.
That's incredible. So you feel that you were being guided almost to learn the faculty of channeling at Delphi, where the Oracle of Delphi was. Do I have that right?
Yes, I felt, I mean,
Wild.
I've been my work has always been around like psychic abilities and channeling all of that. And I had been to Delphi before and I had like intense experiences and epiphanies and channeling while being there. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna let Apollo guide me. He's like my guiding God, my patron God. Anyway, so I'm
Okay.
like, okay, I'm Apollo, I'm open. Flow through me, show me what I need to know, help me understand the Kybalion in a deep way, and help me, most importantly, apply it.
And then is this something that was like a one-time thing, or do you feel that that was just open for you, that ability from then on?
I my whole journey as a psychic healer has been a continuous opening and expansion and learning. I believe we're all born psychic. Some people are born more psychic than others, and it's just a matter of developing it. I was never the psychic kid. I just worked my ass off to do this. I tell people I used to be a complete muggle and that learned to be a wizard.
That's great. Yeah, which gives there's hope for the rest of us.
Of
Uh,
course.
right. So how would you define what does being psychic mean for you? Because I've talked to a lot of psychics. I've worked for psychic companies, and psychics are often wonderful, wonderful people, but they often have different definitions of what psychic is, which often I think tends to come from what school they trained with, if they did some type of formal training. But what does that mean to you, for instance? And do you draw a distinction between psychic and empathic and fine details like that?
I find people use different terms based on on what they like most and what their experience has been. For many years, I used the term intuitive. I've used the term psychic and the word empath as well. To me, being psychic slash intuitive, it's all about coming more into your true nature, because we all have the ability to open up and receive guidance from source, because we are extensions of spirit, we're extensions of the universe, of source, true being, as the ancient Greeks like to call it. We have this physical body, but there is an energetic perspective to that body. The more we learn to soften our physicality and open more into our spirituality, the more we're able to perceive what's beyond the physical world. Essentially, it's the process of being ourselves fully, without the constraints of the physical world.
So that's actually really interesting. That's it. That suggests some interesting modeling ideas in the sense that yeah, and this checks out with experiences that I've had. So, but you would say that as you let go into a sense of self, then the psychic abilities develop naturally.
Absolutely. However, I'm a strong believer in learning how to manage them, learning how to
Okay.
work them. In the same way that we go to like school to learn something, to learn a new skill, I believe we need to do the same thing when it comes to psychic abilities. Like, for
But
example, in ancient,
there are schools for learning that. I think that's something that people don't realize. But yeah,
yeah, there are
that's
schools for
out there in
sure.
the world. Yeah,
Yeah, and we live in an online world. There's so many access to like online content online right now. People can start with books. They can go to online schools. I have my intuition mastery school, which is all about that, training a new generation of intuitives.
that's great.
So there are many ways to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, I teach magic online as well, but that magic is a little different, actually, a lot different actually from psych, because magic is much more about using technical processes to manifest things, whereas the intuitive and psychic faculties, that's a whole different field and often like a different role. Those aren't necessarily combined in one person, and that's not. But like I said, having been around a lot of psychics, it's amazing how detailed the orientation can be, particularly when you look at things like the Barbara Brennan School or the Silva method, I think is another one that people use a lot, right? Those things
Yeah.
there anyways. So what was your take on what do you think the Oracle of Delphi actually was?
So the Oracle of Delphi was there. By the way, there have been many oracles in the ancient times. Here in Cyprus, where I'm from, we had the temple of the Oracle of Aphrodite.
Hmm.
So oracles were part of civilization, were an essential part of life. Divination was not something foreign. It was a way of people to that people got guidance about how to move forward with their life, their purpose, and how state and governmental organizations and people, like important people in the government, would make decisions, important decisions for the country. What people do not understand is what the Oracle of Delphi and the other oracles actually did or didn't. So when you see the prophecies, they are very vague. They can be interpreted in different ways. So modern skeptics like to think, oh, it was a fake kind of thing because it just lied to people. It was very generic. It could be interpreted in different ways. Of course it could, because the whole point of divination in the ancient times was not to take power away from you, was to give you all the knowledge that you needed so that you could make your own decisions.
Okay.
Because, yes, the ancient Greeks did believe in fate to some degree. They called it imarmeni, which is how things are supposed to be. And mira, in English, it's usually referred to as moira, but it's mira, the way it's pronounced in Greek, which is essentially fate. But that had to do with fated opportunities. What we do with these opportunities has to do with our own free will. So the Oracle of Delphi and Apollo, who like provided the prophecies, would not go against your free will. They would not tell you this is going to happen or this is what you're supposed to do. The whole aim was, here's all the information. Now use it to make an informed decision.
And that's the best way to approach divination in a modern context too. I think even if you're just working with tarot or I Ching on your own or with a reader, I think that one thing that people happens with you can see people getting addicted to psychic readings and or intuitive readings and they keep going back until they get the answer that they want. Or they'll go to different psychics until they get the answer they want, which is it's kind of like, well, I like how you put it, which is no, just kind of take in the information and use it to guide your own decisions instead of waiting for somebody to give you permission to do something in your life, which is, I think, a trap.
Yeah. But at the same time, and this is something that I wanted to stress in ancient manifestation secrets,
Mm.
is that there are also karmic contracts in place. Because when it comes to like manifestation, everybody's talking about the law of attraction. It's the most powerful law in the universe. And I call the BS in that, like
Hmm.
on the statement, because yes, the law of attraction, which in the Kybalion is the principle of vibration, the law of vibration, it's a very powerful law in the universe, but it's not more powerful than the law of gravity. You cannot visualize falling upwards and manifest that. You're always going to fall downwards because that's how that law works. So there are no law that's more powerful than other laws. Although laws work together, you cannot trump a law, but you can work with a law. There is fine print that you can use. So
Yeah.
yes, the law of attraction slash vibration is powerful, but there are other causes that result in manifestation. The law of cause and effect states that for every effect and therefore manifestation, there have been a series of causes. One of these causes could be magic. It could be our vibrational frequency. It could be the way we think and believe and feel. But there are also karmic contracts, past lives, ancestral conditioning, collective intentionality, so many other external factors
Yeah.
that we don't talk about that affect the whole thing. Same thing with divination, same thing with manifestation.
That last one's the kicker, collective intentionality. That's the one that people always forget. Because I think people want to live in a solipsistic universe where they can have total control over reality. And it's like, well, there's several billion people on this planet who may have conflicting wills to yours.
And here we are, we all manifested COVID together. Nobody managed to not manifest living in a world with COVID.
Right, right, right. Yeah. And yeah, and then you get into that, you get into questions of not just, it's like, is that collective will? Is that conditioned by the prior karma of the human species? Is it the will of the planet itself to try to like get some breathing room? Is it the stars? Who knows? That's kind
Yeah,
of
can I say something?
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I want to say something about the planet wanting to like relieve itself essentially from all the distractions. Because my first degree was in geography. So I studied like Earth practices, volcanoes, like glaciers, rivers, the oceans, etc. And what my geography teacher always used to tell me is that, George, it's not about saving planet Earth. It's about saving the human race
Oh,
because planet Earth has been here for 4.5 billion years. We've been here for a few 100,000 years, a blink of an eye in the Earth's timeline. The Earth doesn't need us to save her. She will survive. She's
yeah.
just going to kick us out of the system.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, there was an article a couple days ago where they just found life below the lowest point in the universe, or excuse me, universe, in the ocean. Um,
Yes.
the Marianas Trench, they went down, there's vents below that where there's bacterial colonies and worms in these smoker vents. And there's bacterial organisms they've discovered underground in the most inhospitable places of the desert, which is making people reevaluate whether there may or may not be life in the solar system because it may be really deep underneath the ground. Long story short, the too long didn't read on that is life finds a way. It's like there's always some way for life to adapt. So yeah, we could easily like if we hike the temperature on the planet a couple degrees, it won't be habitable for humans anymore, but something else will come out of the biological soup.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned teaching the methods of the chameleon to people, Kybalion, however the correct way to pronounce it is. That's super interesting because it's a great book and I feel that that book really is kind of one of the best first books to give somebody to get into this way of thinking because it gives you the mindset. But how do you go from that to giving people practical methods to test that stuff?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, I'm going to give you a simple example. The law of mentalism that says essentially the all is mind, the universe is mental. And it basically suggests that the underlying nature of reality and consciousness is mental, it's the mind. So to create everything, we have to become one, allow our mind and the way we think about something and our energy to really merge with the energy of what we want to create and become one with that energy. It's like an actor, because I'm an actor as well. When we study for a role, or a writer writing a book, we act on stage and we become that character in that moment, but we are not that character, and the character is not us. It's something in between. There is a creation that happens in the moment. There is so much focus, intention, that you become something else. Same thing with the characters in a book. Like the author is all the characters, and the characters are the author for the moment of creation, but then there is like a distance between that. So that is the process of mental transmutation, where you're
Then
transmuting things and you're
the
becoming one
character
with something.
then the characters become the reader when the reader brings them to life in their mind. So it lives
Exactly.
independently of anyone's mind in a way.
Yes. So what I've done with that is I'm teaching people working with the energy field how to take the energy of a desire that I imagine as an orb, for example, and plant that energy of the desire in the energy field, because our desires and therefore our ideas, they have consciousness, and they're searching all around the world to find hosts, willing hosts, which will help them manifest and come into the world. So
Mm.
we can, when a desire comes to us, we are the host. If we don't give it attention, it's just going to go away and find another host. So what I like to do is, and I guide people through the process of like inviting the desire to plant itself within either our chakras or our energy field, somewhere within our body, essentially energetically, and then creating energetic connections and connecting with beings from the different planes of existence. And this is the law of correspondence that says that as above, so below, talking about the physical plane of existence, the mental plane of existence, and the spiritual plane of existence, where we can access different frequencies and different beings. So creating energetic connections, energetic scouts, essentially, from these desires to those different beings, and who know already what the karmic contracts are, what the different intentionalities are, what's going on collectively in the universe. Also connecting these cord with people, with organizations, with companies, with different energies and beings all around the world that can help that desire manifest. So we're nurturing the energy of the desire so that we can keep moving the momentum and the energy towards that. So that's one of the processes that I teach in the book. But aside from just energetic stuff, I also talk about cognitive, because when it comes to manifestation, there is this toxic positivity
Mhm.
and this spiritual bypassing that goes on all the time, that, oh, just think positively, don't think negative. I'm like, welcome in the negative thoughts, welcome in the negative emotions and the beliefs, because they are there. If they're there, you cannot escape them. You have to feel them, transmute them, change them. So because I do trauma therapy as well with people, I brought in eye movement therapy.
Oh,
you
oh,
many people are Yeah, many people are familiar with EMDR.
okay. Yeah.
I work with a different practice called IEMT, integral eye movement therapy. And I teach that process in the book to process negative thoughts and beliefs rather than just ignore or suppress them,
That's
because
very
it's
clever.
also a step.
That's very clever. That's very modern. I feel like that's I love that. That's a very kind of 21st century approach to doing things very intelligently.
I think it's important to balance cognitive work with energy work. I found in my journey that spiritual people can either be like solely focused on the spiritual or solely focused on like mindset. There are two types. But why not bring it all together? Why not practice magic, but also do trauma therapy, but also
Uh,
do energy work? I
well,
mean,
we're all doing that, we're all kind of doing that anyways, all of us, if you just look at how these practices actually play out in people's lives. I mean, we're doing all of these things all the time, I think, if you're a spiritual person.
yeah, yeah. And it's so important to do that, especially within manifestation, because the focus is on outside in practices, vision boards, visualization, affirmations, wonderful practices. I love them and I use them. But what about inside out practices,
Mm.
working with the energy field? changing your emotions, transmuting negative thoughts and beliefs.
Well, I tend to find that that is actually a lot more powerful because I mean both I love both, but I find maybe you do too that if you work through some really deep thing, whether it's a trauma or just a conflict, it doesn't have to be a trauma. It could be maybe you want two different things and you don't realize that they're in conflict. When you work through that, whether it's through therapy or just sitting on the meditation mat and something like that resolves, don't you find that suddenly things just manifest, the energy uncorks and things can manifest almost immediately?
Of course, because these are all obstacles that are preventing the manifestation from showing up. So when you remove the obstacles, it's so much easier to allow things to show up in your life. But of course, so many other factors, there's timing involved. Sometimes there's a gestation period for a desire to manifest. Sometimes you may be ready, you may have done the work, but things are not showing up because there are other things happening like behind the surface that we're not aware of because we have a sole purpose that has to do with more people. We are in this sole group of people. There are so many different factors that are involved for something to manifest. So when people get disappointed, they're like, oh, I've done the work, I've done the affirmations, I've planted desires. Why is it not showing up? Because it's not the right timing yet.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And one phrase that I love, I don't know who said it originally, but it was probably someone famous, is that God's delays are not God's denials.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
and
love that. And I believe I say something similar in the book. I say, when we plan, God laughs. And it's a very common Yiddish phrase,
okay.
but it applies in so many ways.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, the other thing is one thing that particularly as I've gotten older is we have a lot of, I have plans all throughout every day of stuff that I should totally do, and only some of those get acted on. But I've had plans, my plans for my life have stayed oddly consistent throughout my life, but also have changed a lot. And one thing that's been important for me is going back and looking at either things that did not work out or things that I'm still trying to force to work out that aren't currently working out. And being honest, it's like this is a plan for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Because particularly these days, events keep happening that shift our whole collective timeline so radically. COVID, for instance, you mentioned, it's like post-COVID world is not the same world as pre-COVID world. So there are a lot of plans that made sense in pre-COVID world that don't make sense anymore. And so I think one thing that is a skill that's important for people, a skill that is as important as manifesting is learning to let go.
Yes, I was recently chatting on a different podcast with my another author friend, Ashley Hamalainen, and she coined the term quantum manifestation to really talk about that in the sense that manifestation is no longer just about the subconscious or what we want to manifest. It's about our past lives and the present lives and the time space continuum all working together. And whenever something changes, it all shifts. And we're all manifesting quantumly. And that's, again, a really important point that I also wanted to make in the book. Let's stop thinking about the law of attraction and manifestation as like a very linear process. And
Okay.
let's start thinking about it from different perspectives.
Have you ever had experiences where you felt like you've been able to affect something in the past that you've changed your historical timeline?
I have. I do this a lot because I do like past life regression with people. And I feel like whenever I go back to the past lives to like heal a past life trauma or change something there or heal something, it's like it changes the entire timeline. Same thing with ancestral healing. When we heal the wounds of our ancestors, we heal our ancestors and their lives, and we heal future generations as well. And suddenly it all shifts. And we go from trauma to trauma resilience.
Yeah, I agree. And I like the point about working out things in the past. Um, I actually meant I've done that. So there's really things that I've done to release ancestral trauma that have had radical effects in the present. But what I actually meant was like literally changing what happened in the past in the spookiest sense.
I haven't felt that, no.
Give
But
it a sh-
please tell.
give it a shot. Give it a retroactive causality. We call that in chaos magic. I recommend this as an experiment. Just try something simple, like changing the color of something, an object in your house, for instance.
In the past.
See if you can change something retroactively in the past. Something
I will try and do that.
small, yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love chaos magic. Every time I work with like chaos magicians, they tell me that the wildest and most exciting practices, and I'm so excited.
What are wild ones that you've heard of?
I mean, because you guys like to combine so many different things, it's just so fun. I really loved, I think it was a friend of mine who practiced like chaos magic. She told me about like how to become invisible. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like you just projecting your energy somewhere else while you're still there and people cannot see. I'm like,
That,
huh.
that's clever. I like that. Yeah, the trick I always heard was it's not about becoming invisible. It's making yourself not noticeable by other people, like nondescript. But that actually makes a lot of sense. I like that.
Yeah, it's like because you have your imaginary body, your energy field, and you're imagining that hiding somewhere. And your physical body is there, but your energy is somewhere else. I'm like, okay. And I tried that and it worked. People wouldn't realize I was there and I was just there observing.
Were you out in public?
Yeah. I was like, was an event, like a networking thing. Oh, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody.
So you just imagine you were somewhere else,
I
basically.
projected myself elsewhere.
And nobody was talking to you.
Nobody realized I was just there eating at the buffet.
That's great. That's great.
I
That's a
know.
trick. That's a good trick to remember. That's really funny. Um, yeah, I mean, so much of this stuff can be explained just, I think, by treating attention as if it were an actual physical thing. I think people can, because like examples, you can feel when somebody is staring at your back. Another example, when you're if you have pets and you start paying intense attention to a spot in your room or on the floor, the cats will come up to it, dogs will come up to it, right? Pets
Yeah.
always want to be where the center of attention is. And if you put your attention on something that you want to achieve, and like the manifestation techniques that you've been talking about, it certainly attaches you to the frequency. It puts you in resonance with it. And
And it keeps it alive and the momentum growing because sometimes we have an idea and we know it's not the right time to like work on it because we're working on something else. But if we don't nurture the energy of that idea because it has consciousness and because it's selfish, it wants to manifest, it's just gonna leave and go to someone else. Like this book,
yeah, yeah.
it took me 5 years to manifest it because I wrote it in 2021 and then I take it to my publisher and my publisher is like, it's too advanced, people are not ready for it, why don't you write a book about the Greek gods and goddesses? And that's the book that I wrote after writing this one. And I
Okay.
published Secrets of Greek Mysticism. We talked about it. And then I'm like, I'm not going to let a publisher dictate whether I'm going to publish this or not now or later. So I
Right.
searched and I found a different publisher.
Okay.
And I published like our publisher as well, same publisher as you. And I
Mhm.
published Ancient Manifestation Secrets. That's why it's come out in the same year because it's two different publishers.
Oh, this is an
And
interpretations one. Okay.
yeah, so what I
Awesome.
did was I planted in 2021, I planted the energy of this book in my energy field. And every single morning in my meditation, I would activate that energy. I would tend to that desire. Even though the book was written and it took 5 years to be published, if I were to let it go, someone else would have written the book. So I kept
Oh,
nurturing that energy, connecting the energy with energetic cores to the publishers that I wanted out to like consider the book and publish it. And that's how it eventually came to be.
yeah. I think that's a really generally just a really good description of how magic works. I think practically in people's actual lives. I find it tends to be much more sleight of mind, kind of uh, unconscious, invisible working on resonance in that way, in the sense that there may not be any external ritual or tools or anything like that. It's happening completely invisibly, more with intention, just on the plane of whatever you want to call it, intention, resonance. the astral,
Yeah.
whatever language you want to use for it, but I think it is at its best, it is very invisible like that. However, the thing that always gets in the way is ourselves. And one of the things I like about what you've been saying, particularly the EMDR thing, is a sense that we're always our own worst enemy. So one thing that I'm really curious about that you don't hear people talking about very much with manifestation is how do you deal with when you get discouraged? Because sometimes when you try to manifest things, they happen immediately. And of course, we'll say, well, it was meant to be. Sometimes it can be painful, like 5, 10 years to manifest a book like you're talking about. And then the question is, if it's a long slog like that, the question is always, okay, um, if you're getting a lot of resistance, it's like, is the universe telling me not to do this, or is the universe telling me to really push through to show that, to put more effort into it to really show that I want it? And
Look, my
setbacks
yeah.
that can sometimes be deadly.
Look, my motto in life, and I learned this from Chris Jenner,
Okay,
is if someone says no, you're talking to the wrong person.
okay.
And I stand by that. I don't accept a no. I'm like, you're just not the right person for this book. Like, I'm working on a card deck, and my publisher was like, it's too Disney-like. I'm like, huh, Disney-like is what I was going for. I mean, look at me. What did you expect?
Have you
Okay, Gothic.
have you seen how much money Disney makes? This is not a bad.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm like, they're just not the right publisher. I don't accept no. But my point is, whenever people get discouraged, like discouragement is a limiting thought, limiting belief. I feel discouraged. I feel I'm not good enough for this. I feel I'm not ready for this. I feel that other people have done that. This is where the EMDR technique, which is basically IEMT that I teach in the book, comes into play. So whenever we make statements that have a pronoun like I, me, myself, we are making a statement about the way we think to identify. So if someone says, I feel I'm a failure, they've learned to identify as someone who is a failure. And this is a process I include in the book. And I'm going to guide you through like simply the questions that I ask in the process. So I am a failure. When you think of the I that is the failure, how old is I? Someone may say 5. I don't know why, but 5 comes to mind. Okay.
Hmm.
And where is 5-year-old I? And
Huh.
someone may say, oh, I feel 5-year-old I in the heart. Okay. What's happening around 5-year-old I in the heart? Oh, my dad is really judging me because I wasn't doing something correctly. Okay. So they go into a specific memory or a specific period of their life where that belief started being created because the body keeps the score. A very popular book, The Body Keeps the
Oh, yeah.
Score. Our body stores our memories that shaped our identity. And those statements that start with an I, me, myself, they help us identify those identity imprints. And then by asking questions, we can find them in the body and then interrogate them. But instead of just interrogating them, then I'm like, okay, I want you to think about that memory of your dad judging you. And while you're thinking about it, start moving your eyes side to side.
Mhm.
Then start moving your eyes diagonally. Then the other diagonal. And what that does, it's scientifically proven to rewire the way we perceive those memories. And it literally changes the emotional attachment we have on those memories and changes the past
Yeah,
and the way we
yeah.
think and identify about the past. And then you ask yourself again, okay, how old is I now? Ooh, I is 10 years old now. And then you go on and on and on and on and on until you reach the present moment and you go through all the experiences that shape that belief. And by the end of it, you no longer believe you're a failure. You're like, oh no, I'm not a failure. I'm a success. I'm excited to work on it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and there has been a ton of scientific work done on EMDR and related therapy.
Yeah.
It's legit. It's for real. Have you tried EFT at all?
Yes, I use EFT as well. I use it less now since I discovered IEMT, again, similar to EMDR. I've been using that more
Okay.
because, I mean, EMDR specifically, it's the most research, not the most research, the most effective and recommended way to treating PTSD.
It's
And I
actually
think there's something in that.
it's actually used in by militaries to treat PTSD. So it's like for real, for real.
Yeah, I work with veterans, like
Oh, wow.
guiding them through IEMT process, like US veterans, essentially working through their traumas, and it's really effective. And there was a lot of
Really,
work done on veterans.
really. If you can, I mean, obviously you've got confidentiality, but talk about, I'm curious, particularly maybe some of the tougher cases you've seen of people who have really like serious industrial grade trauma. Because you can definitely tell when you meet people like that. I'm curious about some of the more intense sessions you may have had and how that's gone.
The most important thing when dealing with trauma, and that's actually really important to talk about, like the manifestation book as well, because when we do this work, things come up and we need to know what we can handle, and we need to know what we actually need someone else to guide us through it, because it's very easy to get re-traumatized. So when I'm working with people with really intense stuff going on, I had a woman who, her father was a serial killer, and he would take her to see the victims, and
Whoa,
she was traumatized, and she
that's
had
that's
all
yeah.
those memories suppressed. So it was very easy for her to get triggered when those memories come up. So it's really important to work with someone who's trauma informed, who's specialized in helping you be safe in these situations. Essentially, re-traumatization, that's important for everybody to know. Re-traumatization occurs when we remember a traumatic experience in a stressed out body, in a tense body,
Okay.
because when we remember something traumatic, our body tenses up and we go into fight or flight.
Okay.
So
So
when we,
okay. Okay.
yeah,
So that's
so
almost
when we,
that's like an actual literal definition of the mechanism of it. That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that because this is a word you hear people share using a lot more recently, and
yes,
that's a very actual clear definition of what that is.
yes, so we tense up, our heartbeat gets faster, our breath like gets like more intense as well. We get cold, we get like we start hyperventilating, and our body is like tense. So the way to treat PTSD, for example, one of the ways, and to prevent re-traumatization, is to remember that memory, that traumatic memory, in a relaxed body, and therefore use interoception. You realize that, okay, right now I'm realizing this. I'm telling myself, or the practitioner tells you, you know what, you're experiencing a like really intense feelings right now. Let's affirm that. Are you safe right now? Are you still in the past? No, I'm in the present moment. Great. So let's take a deep breath in and become a wet noodle with the exhale. And you teach emotional regulation. And when you relax the body and allow the body, the relaxed body, to think about that traumatic memory, then the body gets rewired and really realizes that I'm not in danger anymore. It's just a memory. So that's a way, one of the processes we use in trauma healing, especially to prevent re-traumatization. And if you're going through any kind of inner work and something triggers you and you feel tense, just calm your body down. And there are two of my favorite techniques. Is the wet noodle technique. Take a deep breath in, and with the exhale, become a wet noodle. It's like limb. You're pushing and it's just there. Or visualizing your sit bones expanding outwards and melting into the chair, because there is research saying that when we relax our sit bones, then we relax the entire body. It's a lot of it is controlled there.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. Um, what are your favorite ways for getting people into that relaxed state, particularly if it's a really stressful memory? I mean, of course, what you're saying immediately makes me think of MDMA therapy, but that can't be the only, which is very, has a lot of positive,
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
that can't be the only thing.
No, there are many ways to like emotionally regulate. The wet noodle technique is one of them. The sit bone technique is the second one of them. Another one that I use is a peripheral vision one. So you basically find a point to look at like straight ahead, and then you allow your peripheral vision to widen and widen and widen. And you do this for like 30 seconds, and suddenly you realize you're no longer as stressed out. You're more relaxed. And of course, the most popular technique for emotional regulation is gradual muscle relaxation, starting from the top of the head and then relaxing each muscle sequentially. So what I usually do if someone gets triggered during a session is I guide them through these techniques. And then I ask them, okay, which one was most successful? Because each person reacts differently to different techniques. And then once they've found what works best, then we use that. So when we're doing manifestation work, healing work, whatever it is, when we get triggered, it's really important to be mindful, first of all. Okay, how is my body reacting to this right now? And let's try the techniques. Let's see which one works best to regulate and calm myself down.
Hmm. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Well, let's see. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've gotten off the thread of Hermeticism, but what have we not talked about with your book that people should know?
I'm trained thinking fine because we think we've covered everything. Let me
Okay.
just go into my book. Oh, I found something really important.
Okay.
In the book, I talk about a 5-step process to manifestation that's very different from the practices and the processes taught out there. Like the most famous process, the New Age process, the secret process,
Mhm.
is ask, believe, and receive. The idea like you ask for something, I want this. And then I believe it by faking it till you make it, forcing the belief in your mind, and then receive, which is like allow yourself to receive it. Easier said than done. Now, my process goes the other way around. So I'm going to share the 5 steps, and then I'm going to explain them briefly and the reason I've decided to create this process. So step number 1 is all about raising your vibration. Step number 2, clarifying your desires. Step number 3, releasing limiting beliefs. Step number 4, nurturing the energy of the desires. And step number 5, taking inspired action. Now, the reason we start by raising the vibration, our vibration, it's essentially unless we know our life purpose and what we're here to be and do, unless we're aligned to who we truly are, any desire we have will not be an authentic desire. It's going to come from the ego. So
Mhm.
we start by our spiritual practice, by raising a vibration, connecting with source, connecting with spirit, finding out who we are. I guide people through a process of identifying what their life purpose is, which is connected to their soul purpose and therefore their past lives, karmic contracts, etc. And then we clarify step 2, clarify your desires based on your life purpose. Because a claim I make in the book is that you cannot manifest everything you want, which is goes against like the popular manifestation teachings. Like you can
Right,
manifest anything you want. I'm like, no, you cannot,
right, right,
and you shouldn't want to
right.
because you shouldn't want to manifest something that goes against your life purpose. We come here for a mission.
Mhm.
So let's find that mission first and then clarify those desires and then choose and manifest desires that are aligned with that life purpose, with that mission. And then we move into the next step, all about releasing limiting beliefs. Okay, now that I've raised my vibration and therefore I know who I am, I know my purpose, and I find desires, let me release the limiting beliefs that I have that prevent me from manifesting those desires through IEMT, eye movement therapy. But I also have energetic practices of connecting with the frequency of emotions and beliefs, new beliefs, so that we can energetically receive those beliefs into our energy field. And then after doing that, step number 3, we go into step number 4, nurturing the energy of your desires. And this is all about planting the desires in your energy field, connecting them with different people and entities from the different planes of existence. And then after you've done that consistently, you take inspired action. But my way of taking inspired action is more practical. I'm all about balancing masculine and feminine energy. Masculine energy being all about taking action, structuring, moving forward, whereas feminine energy is more about receptive, going within, receiving the guidance, etc. But a cop out that many people use in the spiritual community is, "Ooh, I'm gonna do a meditation to balance my masculine and feminine energy," and then they get out of the meditation and I'm like, "I'm balanced," and I'm like, "No, you're not. It has to be practical. It has to be actionable. You need to see this balance in your day-to-day life. So I guide people to plan their year in advance, their
Mhm.
month in advance, their week in advance, and their day in advance to ensure that there is an equal amount, a balance of masculine and feminine energy activities
Mhm.
in the year, month, quarter, month, week, and day. So that we're actually following that balance, not just balancing the energy. How that would look like if I know I'm going to launch 3 projects this year, I'm going to schedule holidays right after to balance that out with some feminine energy to let myself unwind. If I know I'm going to work late today, I'm going to make sure to take the day off tomorrow, for example, to allow myself time to relax. So it's all about finding that balance, because if we are like constantly go, 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 then we lose the opportunities for receiving. We lose the opportunities for intuitive connection and
Yeah.
guidance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that a big part of, like you mentioned, the secret formula and what is not mentioned in that, but what is mentioned in your approach, which I think is really critical, is not questioning the mechanism by which you can manifest something, but asking why has it not manifested already? Where am I standing in my own way? Or do I want something? And that may not be negative. It may be you want something else in a positive sense, but it conflicts with you have conflicting desires. That's very common. So I think that's a really good process of working through those things. That's a really simplified and effective, I think, modern approach to magic, what you've just outlined. I really like that.
Yeah. And what I've done in the last part of the book is I have a manifestation challenge, a 10-day one,
Okay.
where every single day it's all about using like the processes in the book sequentially to manifest a specific desire. But what I do in the end is like, even if your desire has not manifested, identify and make a list of how you've gotten closer to that manifestation, because there is a momentum that goes on. You've nurtured the energy of that desire. Have you seen more people having what you wanted? Or do you see evidence of that desire starting to show up in your life? Are you having more synchronicities? That's another way to realize that, you know what? Actually, the universe is supporting me.
Yeah.
I may not have the desire here right now, but I'm closer.
Yeah, I find that keeping records can be really helpful because we often don't realize how quickly things work and how dramatically things work. Because for me, it's like I get up every day and it's the same day, and things may have already completed or manifested, and I'm not even realizing it. That's why taking stock and having a practice of gratitude is, I think, so helpful because it reminds you of the things that already have come into your life, the blessings you already have, everything that's already worked. I can get up and
Yes.
grumpy and then look around and say, well, wait, this is actually everything I wanted when I was a teenager. So it's like when you zoom in
Yeah.
on a longer time scale, it suddenly it's can be very reassuring.
Can I share something? Because you mentioned gratitude, which is
Or
one of my favorite practices, and something that I teach in the book, in the part about raising your vibration. Because there are many, I teach energetic ways of raising your vibration, and then physical, practical ways. How can we adjust our lifestyle, change things in our home, our relationships, the way we eat, the way we exercise to keep our vibration high?
Mhm.
I teach what I call gratitude touchstones. So, ways of maintaining that high vibration throughout the day. And this is something that I do every single day. I have 3 gratitude touchstones during the day, and I've placed them in very strategic places. In the beginning of the day, I send a voice message to my best friend saying all the things I'm grateful for, among other things. I do like a longer practice there, but essentially it starts with gratitude. So you set the foundation of the day to that vibration of gratitude. Then in the middle of the day, I send a voice message to another friends. I got them all into it. They don't have a choice. I send a message to another best
That's great.
friend,
That's great.
and I say, yeah, and I say what I'm grateful for so far in the day. This gives you the opportunity, if something went wrong, to transmute it with gratitude, because gratitude is a transmuting emotion. You can say, well, even though that thing happened, I'm grateful that I got through it and I learned so and so. So you transmute it, and therefore you maintain that high vibration in the middle of the day. And then at the end of the day, I send another voice message to another best friend. and I tell them what I'm grateful for throughout the entire day. And then, fourth best friend, I send another voice message and I tell her my highlight of the day. And therefore, the number one thing I'm most grateful for. So you start the day, go through the day, and finish the day with the vibration of gratitude. And you're constantly being reminded, oh my God, I'm so grateful
That's
because
amazing.
of everything that I've experienced.
That's beautiful. That's amazing you put yourself on the hook like that also, where you have to say it to other people.
And they have to say it back. I mean, they have to like send me their voice message as well.
What happens if they don't?
I scold them. No, I'm kidding.
It's like that was very intense. You just said they have to send it back to me. That's great.
You know what? Because when they listen to it, they also activate the energy that I've put out there.
Yeah,
And then when they send me theirs back, I help them activate that energy as well because I hear it back. So I
that's
give
beautiful.
attention to that
That's beautiful. That's so you do this every day?
daily for the past 4 years. It changed my life.
Weekends too?
Weekends too,
Wow.
no breaks.
How did it so how did it change your life?
Well, first of all, I've manifested 2 books this year,
Okay.
but more than that, I feel, aside from like manifestation, I feel happier. I feel more fulfilled. And it's not like I have more things than I used to have. I just see them more and I acknowledge them more. And therefore, I milk my life more because we have so many things around us at all times that we can be grateful about. And we don't really spend time appreciating them. So when we understand them, you're just happier.
Yeah.
Like after I do my practice, I go out like to go to like drama school. And I'm just walking. I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful that the sky is blue. And oh my God, look at like the trees around me. Like, so grateful that they're so pretty. I'm like, I'm walking in a street right now that's been built so I can walk and not work like in dirt. I'm so grateful about that. It just gets you thinking in a different way and you enjoy life more. And I think we all want to enjoy life more
Yeah.
and be happy in the moment.
No, I think that's one of the most important practices. And for me, it just turns my mind like it occupies my mind so my mind doesn't start going bitter, like because it can do
I
because I
love it.
like things roll downhill naturally following gravity. So, and I definitely my thought process is like I'll start to go dark. So, gratitude also it feels balanced. Like there's a lot of emotions where, for instance, you immediately think of their opposite, love, hate, angry, happy, or whatever it is. Gratitude, like you said, I love how you phrased it, is a transmuting emotion. It really, I don't think there's any situation it can't fully handle, um, within reason. But yeah, no, that's definitely one of my favorite practices as well. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for being back on the show. I think feels like we've covered the major points of your book, but tell people where they can buy it, of course, and where to find out more about you.
Yes, you can buy. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation and I'm so excited for people to hopefully enjoy it as well. And you can get Ancient Manifestation Secrets anywhere books are sold, of course, on Amazon as well. But if you go to ancientmanifestationsecrets.com, when you get the book, you also get a free workshop with me, which is a past life regression workshop where I guide you to your past lives to retrieve manifestation skills you already mastered in those past lives and bring them into your current lifetime. So you're speeding up
That's
your
cool.
manifestation journey.
That's great. That sounds interesting, actually. I'm curious about that. Okay. Well, hopefully I can have you back on 2 more times next year when you're promoting 2 new books for 2025. So I look forward to that.
Fingers crossed, manifesting that for
Yeah,
both
there
of
you
us.
go. And yes, absolutely. And thank you again.